am SF Rogers.
And I am DL Golden.
And we are the Authors Chaos. And joining us today is the talented EL Lee.
We are giving this a second shot after the first one messed up pretty significantly on us last time. So, EL, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who are you?
So, I'm a young adult fantasy author. I've been writing my whole life. I used to write comic books as a kid, and then I eventually transitioned to screenplays and then writing books. And my debut novel, Realm of Hope, actually I have it right here, is an adaptation of the screenplays that I wrote as a teenager in high school, and it was originally written as a video game, and I love writing books that read like a video game and have influence from these shows and movies and books that I grew up with and loved watching and reading and playing. And yeah, so Realm of Hope has been my passion project for like over half my life now, and I'm so glad to see it out there for the world to see.
That's amazing. So you say it's video game influenced, and I think the major question at the front of my mind is what video games influenced your writing?
Yeah, so I used to play primarily JRPG type of video games, so like Japanese role-playing games.
Mm-hmm.
So the main influence I'd have to say would be like Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy, Fire Emblem, Dragon Quest. There's a bit of Xenoblade in there. Yeah, you can find some definitely influence from all sorts of JRPG type of games where you have like a party and you're going on some kind of quest and you're trying to save the world from something, and you have like this party of like different types of units and seeing how they battle, like people who are mages and warriors and people who can heal, and just seeing them all interact with each other as they go on this journey to save the world from something.
For sure. Kingdom Hearts, you had us at Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. Kingdom Hearts is my go-to generally, so it's always good to see another fan.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said you've been writing for most of your life. Timeline, when did that start? Was it, you said high school or middle school?
So it's kind of an interesting timeline. So I was first introduced to writing when I was like about 7 years old. I remember in the second grade, we had this thing called like Writer's Workshop where we would write for half an hour each day. And so many stories came to mind. And I just never ran out of ideas. And that's when I discovered, hey, I like writing. I like creating stories. I like coming up with ideas and putting those words onto a page. And after that, I started like drawing my own little comic books and stuff. I was like really inspired by like One Piece and Pokemon and things like that. And so I'd like draw little comics. And then eventually I started playing Kingdom Hearts when I was about 10 years old. And then I played Kingdom Hearts 2. I finished that by the time I was like 11 or 12. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, the story is pretty cool. I love the characters. I love the music. And I got super inspired to write a comic book that was based on that. That was, like, loosely inspired from all of that. And that was, like, kind of where Realm of Hope actually first started. It went under a lot of changes in a comic book form. It was more about, like, ninjas and stuff. And then eventually I got into writing screenplays because me and a few childhood friends were all interested in that part of the industry, and we'd write little comedy skits or like little short films or little scripts for like a TV series that we had in mind. And eventually I was like, hey, why don't I write a screenplay for a video game? Because I would love to see like my own video game written and things like that, and inspired by Kingdom Hearts. And that's when I wrote Realm of Hope as a screenplay for a video game. And then once I got to college, I was like, hey, I'm going to adapt these into books because I love seeing more of the characters' thoughts. And I think this could work well as a book as well, because you get to look more into a character's point of view and see more of the description and everything. And so that's when I decided to write Realm of Hope in the form of a trilogy series. I wrote other screenplays like at the time, like in high school, that all took place in the same universe, but different time periods. So there were 5 other screenplays other than Realm of Hope. So then I decided to adapt all of them into their own little trilogy series and all part of their own universe, all part of like the same universe and different time periods. And you can see references from Realm of Hope, like in Realm of Hope, to other characters that will be part of like future trilogies that I plan to have published. And that makes it easy for anyone to be like, haha, I know that reference. Like if they read any of the trilogies out of order, because you don't really need to read any of them in order of publication date. I mean, they all take place in the same universe. So just kind of like, hey, nice to know type of details. So yeah,
You could essentially pick up one and then pick up another and not have to go in order.
yes, that's the idea.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
being someone who has read a majority of that first book now, I'm 60 pages or so from the end, whatever it is.
Wow.
Absolutely phenomenal, by the way. I've noticed that there are definitely inspirations from like Kingdom Hearts and other video games. It helps to have that knowledge from, say, Final Fantasy and that to know what certain things are. But your story is not nearly as convoluted, say, as like Kingdom Hearts gets. Kingdom Hearts gets out of control really fast, right? Yours is not nearly that convoluted, but you are juggling a large cast of characters throughout this entire thing. How are you keeping track of everything that is going on in your story? Because I have one protagonist, and I have a hard enough time keeping track of it. You have like 9 of them floating around in your set here. How are you keeping track of all that?
Yeah, I guess part of it is just I have a very expansive glossary that I have like written down and everything, with like the character profiles, the motivations, what their arcs are throughout the story, especially like the first book, and like what are their abilities, what do they look like, and having that little cast of characters list at the front of the book really helps too. I've always loved large casts. I love character interaction. I love seeing how different characters play out and giving each character a unique set of abilities or unique powers and a unique role in the story, especially since they're all agents who have different roles in the organization. It's really fun just coming up with new ways to expand the world that I have in the magic system by having so many different characters with different powers and stuff. And it's cool coming up with cool abilities like, hey, this person can stop time for a few seconds. Like, it's really fun for me.
So it sounds like you're more of a plotter than a pantser then, because you have to keep track of all of these people. I know for me, like Daniel said, I have such a hard time like keeping track of the things that I've given my characters that I have to like go back and be like, wait, is that actually part of her powers? Did I just create that from nowhere? Like, with that glossary, have you like developed a kind of system for like remembering them or remembering each character just besides that glossary?
Yeah, I actually have all these documents that keep track of everything. Like, oh, hey, this stuff is important to remember. I even have my own document that lists the characters' abilities throughout the series. So, hey, in this chapter they can do this ability, but then by this chapter their ability has evolved to the point where they can do this too. So, like, they've leveled up in a way.
Yes.
To develop this ability, they learned that skill, or they got really better. They got like a lot better at casting magic, or for example, and they can make this spell instead of this spell, things like that. Like, so yeah, I have a way to track everything because I made a timeline for each character and exactly which chapter they're able to do this thing.
That's really cool.
So, have you always been such a heavy planner when you're writing, or did it start out as kind of pantsing it and then you've had to change it because it got so expansive? How did that go for you?
Yeah, I think in my case, since I feel like my case is a bit more unique since Realm of Hope started off as a screenplay for a video game. A lot of it was outlined, and I remember when I wrote the screenplay, it was kind of pantsed. I mean, I guess like some of it was outlined, like the core parts of the story were outlined, but then like some of the parts in between were pantsed. And then by the time, because I wrote a screenplay when I was a teenager, and by the time I got to it to adapt it into a book, it had been like several years had passed, like at least 7 years had passed. So I was like, okay, some of this does not work for a book. So then I had to like rewrite the plot, like some of the plot outline and stuff like that. So I'm definitely a heavy plotter, just to make sure everything lines up accordingly and makes sense. So I had like things outlined, but sometimes like things that I outline might like when I actually write it into the manuscript, like some things might change because like, oh, this idea might work better. So honestly, now that I think about it, I might actually be more of a gardener, so to speak, like kind of like the in between plotter and pantser, like the I plant the seeds, but sometimes they're going to grow in different ways because sometimes my characters have a mind of their own for something that works better for the story.
Yeah, and they read like that. They read very organically, and they still have time to be kids. It feels like throughout the story, even though the
Yeah.
world seems like it's ending. And I love the levity that gets added in there, in between those big climactic battles. You do a really good job of that, so that's obvious.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Um, a good chunk of readers really like to mention that the characters feel like teenagers in this story. I love writing witty teenage banter and stuff, and I think it also helps that I originally wrote the story when I was a teenager, so like a lot of the dialogue for a teenager kind of comes naturally to me
Yep.
as well.
Not yeah, you're not too far removed from it at that point yet. That's fair.
Right. For sure. So, you're self-published, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How was that? How was that process for you? Did you go through KDP? Did you use Ingram? Was there things to help you along the way? Like, how did that go for you?
Yeah, so I went through both KDP and Ingram Spark because I wanted to basically reach a wide audience and not have to have anyone limited by any formatting and to whatever location they're at. Like, I wanted to have the book be accessible for anyone.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
yeah, so I basically looked up a lot of tutorials on YouTube and stuff for how to format everything. They're like super helpful. There's a lot of really nice YouTube channels that can help walk you through the process and stuff. And it definitely is intimidating at first. Like KDP is kind of confusing, especially for a first time author. And same with like Ingram and stuff. So there's a lot of tutorials online and on Reddit and I've also like been networking quite a bit within the writing and author community, so it's always nice to be like, "Hey, do you know how this works? You know, this works." Like honestly, the writing community and author community, they're like definitely some of the most amazing communities I've ever encountered. Here on like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter, like they're super helpful. Like I never feel stupid or anything like asking, "Hey, how does this thing work?" or "Hey,
Yes.
did this KDP thing change?" Yeah.
You said you went through and figured out how to do formatting. Did you use a specific software for your formatting, or did you just go through formatting with Word?
Yeah, so I used Vellum for formatting Realm of Hope. It's definitely pretty easy to follow. There's a lot of documentation online for Vellum, which made the process pretty easy. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun playing around with it as I was able to get the map for my book like put in the front, like near the front of the book, and putting in little like fun little chapter headers or little paragraph scene break symbols and stuff. And yeah, it's definitely easy. Vellum's definitely easier to work with as a first time author.
Yeah, I when I put out Origins, I formatted just using Word, and it was a nightmare. Just a massive headache to get through. And so I actually recently downloaded Vellum and am putting out a second edition with Vellum. So I will sing their praises from the rooftops every time I get the chance. But it's obvious to tell that you used something, that you used Vellum to make it look really pretty on the inside, because your book looks like a legitimate book. It doesn't look like something you get from an amateur author. or an indie publisher of some sort. It does look really good on the inside. So kudos to you for all the work you put into that.
Thank you. Yeah, I personally cannot stand Word. I do not like looking at Word. I do most of my writing on Google Docs, so um, yeah, I was like, I am not dealing with formatting through Word. I was like, that's it. I'm just downloading Vellum.
Yeah, and Vellum only runs through Apple for those that don't know. I mean, it's only for Mac. The other process for PC was what?
Atticus.
Atticus. So if anybody's listening and looking for formatting software, Atticus is the other one for PC.
Yeah, for PC.
So.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I heard Atticus is pretty good too.
Yeah,
what I've looked into, it looks like it's a really easy software to use.
Yeah, I think it was Casey Sutton. He said he had used Atticus, and his book is really pretty on the inside as well.
So we've talked a little bit about Realm of Hope, about how it's was a screenplay, all that jazz. So tell us, like, your blurb. Tell us about it. Tell us about the story.
Yeah, so basically Percy Jackson meets the Avengers meets Avatar The Last Airbender with video game influence is probably like the closest I can get to like a one-line elevator sort of pitch. It's basically where in this realm that's dying and taken over by darkness, there's an organization called Lumiere Inc. that created these agents who are basically these warriors who are descended from powerful bloodline figures throughout history. They train them to become these agents to help protect the world from falling into darkness. So, the story of Realm of Hope basically follows these agents as they rise up the ranks and deal with inner demons and things like that while they try to figure out how to save the world from darkness.
That sounds really cool.
It's a very fun read. I would call it it's really high science fantasy. Is that what you would use?
Yeah, I think so. I've also referred to it as like a dark fantasy sci-fi as well because of some of the themes. But yeah, I would say it's definitely a high fantasy, fantasy sci-fi or science fantasy. I haven't seen a lot of that. I haven't seen a lot of books with both fantasy and sci-fi elements, so I thought it'd be really fun. I really enjoyed the sci-fi fantasy world of Ruby and Final Fantasy 15. So, yeah, I just really loved the idea of, hey, we don't have to worry about horse-drawn carriages as we get from point A to point B. You can just teleport there with this little teleporting device. And, hey, we don't have to worry about inventory too much because you have this little device that can store all that for you. It's really fun just blending science and magic together. As I work in tech, so it's fun to kind of blending like both aspects of my lives as both someone in tech and someone as an author into a book.
Yeah, we've talked to many authors that they get this blended approach to their genres that you just don't see in a lot of traditional publishing. My book is science fantasy. Another person we talked to, his book was science fantasy. It's interesting to me that we're seeing this cross genre reworking of storytelling. I feel like we're getting more varied results with that.
And we're finding that more people are kind of breaking those molds of like, I specifically write science fiction, or I specifically write high faith romance, or I specifically write high adventure. Like, it's this beautiful blend. Like, we're meeting more and more people who are like, hey, I've blended Ender's Game with Lord of the Rings and developed this great story. And that's kind of a cool thing, talking to all of these people who are self-publishing or indie published, is that they don't have that red tape that's like, hey, you can't have this science fiction stuff and the fantasy stuff all in one go. Like, you have to just go science, or you just have to go fantasy. So it's really cool to like meet you guys and get to talk to y'all and see how you're blending them so well.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely the beauty of self-publishing. You can do whatever you want. You can have full creative control of anything. And that's part of the reason why I chose to self-publish in the first place. I wanted to write the book that I wanted to read, and I felt that with traditional publishing, I would have been pretty restricted by that. I wanted to have the large cast, a very large and diverse world, and having a fantasy world set in a futuristic time period with sci-fi elements. Like, you don't see a lot of that in traditional publishing, and I'm glad I'm not restricted by any rules in traditional publishing to make what I wanted to read happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
And yeah, it feels really good to be able to have a nice refreshing change of pace for certain things. Because I mean, you can read as many science fiction books or as many fantasy books as you want, but they tend to get stale. You tend to get the same thing over and over again. And I feel like these blended ones are a nice change of pace. When you considered it as a fantasy story, did the sci-fi stuff come afterward, or was that always mixed in? Did you always want to have that science stuff inside of there?
Yeah, it definitely was always mixed in because I think it all started when I really wanted to have cool weapons in my
Yes.
um yeah, because part of the reason why I even like fantasy so much in the first place is I love swords. I love writing action scenes with swords. One of my favorite things to write is action scenes, and you can't really do too much with action scenes with a gun. You just kind of shoot it. Working with a sword or like a magical sword or a sword that can shoot things or like tonfas that can shoot things is like super fun to me, and it gives you a lot more leeway with a science fantasy world where you can just, oh hey, I can have this tonfa shoot things as well and
Right.
work that into a fight scene, or having cool technology that I can just kind of come up with and not be restricted by the rules of physics that are in our world, because I don't like to too much
Right.
of physics. I do not like to account for that, so we just kind of assume laws of gravity and stuff do not apply
Yep.
in
Yep.
this fantasy world the same way.
Well, it reads very well, and I have not needed to pick any of the physics apart, so that's good.
You appreciate it.
So we ask everyone this question at the end here. What is the best piece of advice that you have gotten as an indie author or as an author in general that you would like to give out to everybody that's listening?
I would say to write down or keep track of every piece of positive feedback that you get. And the reason why is, well, I'm sure we've all dealt with it at some point or are still dealing with it, but imposter syndrome is a thing. It
Mm-hmm.
exists. Sometimes you're going to look at your writing and be like, what is this? Or especially during the editing stages, when you've looked at your own manuscript for so long, you do kind of lose the sense of, hey, is this actually amazing? Or is should I even be writing this?
Mm-hmm.
Or just times where you just feel unmotivated. Having like an album full of screenshots of positive feedback, or like having a
Mm-hmm.
document full of like every piece of positive feedback that you've gotten, it's really motivating just to be able to look back at that again and be like, hey, this person said this about my work, this person said this about my work. Like, it's a good way to keep yourself motivated, because imposter syndrome definitely hits hard for me. So I often find myself like looking through this again and again just to keep myself going, just to keep motivated, just to keep the momentum going. I think that's something that a lot of us could benefit from. Just when things get tough, when writing gets tough, when editing gets tough, it's a way to keep your morale up.
That's like a really good piece of advice. So we interviewed Catherine Rothschild earlier, and she said celebrate the little, like every little accomplishment, celebrate like getting to 100 pages. So I feel like that kind of vibes along with the same thing of like keep a hold of those little nuggets and like celebrate them, celebrate the things you do well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool because no matter who you are, no matter what author you are, you're going to get reviews that are not good reviews, and a bad review always hits so much harder than a good review does. For some reason we give so much more weight to the people that say we suck than we do to the people that say, "Oh, you're amazing. I can't wait to read your next book."
Yeah.
But I love that advice. That just keep track of it, and you can say, "Oh, I know this review is just absolutely crappy, but I do have these 10 reviews that say, hey, this was fun to read. I enjoyed this." I think that's amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely something I'm going to tuck away.
Yeah. Because, I mean, the thing is, like, chances are, like, your book might not be for everyone. Not everyone's gonna like your writing, not everyone's gonna like the story. That's totally valid. That's totally fine. Everyone has, like, writing ultimately is subjective. And just like how art is subjective. So there might be a point in time where someone says something that's like not so positive, but I think it's always important to focus on the positive as well, because it's likely that those are the people that your audience is intended for.
Yeah,
For sure.
absolutely.
For sure.
I did want to ask, just as a fan in general, when can we expect the sequel or more content from you based in this world?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the editing stages for my second book. I've been going through it with an editor and iterating on feedback and things like that. I'm super excited for it. I think it's better than the first book, honestly, because a lot of the setup has paid off in the second book. It was all the things that were set in Realm of Hope. Um, like, those seeds are getting watered and sprouting in the second book, so I'm very excited for it. I'm hoping to get it like either by the end of the year or the beginning of next year. I want to polish it to the best it can be, so I'd rather not be too rushed for it. I'd rather delay a project if that means getting it to the best quality it can possibly be. I also have a prequel novella that I want to have free for my newsletter subscribers. I'm hoping to get that out by the end of the year. Yeah, it's super fun writing from the perspective of the antagonists. So I'm very excited for all projects.
Yeah, that's cool.
Well, we will have to get you back on when the sequel comes up and get it out there for everybody, because your book is well worth reading and very, very good. So
For sure.
Oh, that's amazing to hear.
So where can everybody find you? We do have your book, Realm of Hope, currently on our TBR on Goodreads already. So where can everyone else find you on social media?
Yeah, so I'm the most active on TikTok and Instagram. I post daily on TikTok. Instagram, I post like several times a week. So it's author_Ellie, so ELLI. Also have the same Twitter handle. So yeah, you'll find me on there. I'm pretty active. So
Okay.
yeah.
So we'll send you an email and get all those links so that people can get them in the description of your video and all that jazz. So
it has been an absolute blast talking to you, Riel. We appreciate you coming on.
Again, thank you for being patient with us.
Yeah. No worries. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been. Oh, sorry. We do this every time. I am DL Golden. My book Origins is available on Amazon from the link in my link tree on TikTok. You can also find it in our TBR on Goodreads.
Yes. And I'm SF Rogers. My book is coming, Execration of Autumn. I promise, I'm working real hard on it. Yeah, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music. Go find us on Goodreads. Our TBR is there. There are several books on there from authors that we love and have just appreciated starting friendships with, just like ELE. ELE, thank you so much for coming and being with us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, and yeah, I'm excited to be on here again.
All right. We'll talk to you later, guys. Bye.